Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. It's an interesting time where you are looking at military technology with wars happening all around you. Something that we need to learn, especially with Bharat having two very interesting neighbors. We need to be on top of it. So, on that note, Dev Talks is going to start a little series on military technology and new innovations in the world. For that, I have with me Sqn Ldr Vijainder Thakur, who looks at these developments very carefully. And mind you, ladies and gentlemen, today I have a development that will literally blow the Highmass off, if I may. So the Russians did something, and I'm going to get Sir to talk about it a little further. They have attacked an Highmass system within seconds of it firing a launching an attack on the Russians. So that's something which is very, very interesting because this is something that doesn't happen. Of course, when I say it, it doesn't sound that much, but I'm going to let Sir talk about this a little further so that we can understand what this development is and what does it mean for India. Namaskar, Sir. Jai Hind and welcome to the show.
Jai Hind, Adi, delighted to be on your show. And yes, I do look at military affairs from a technology point of view. The reason why I do that is because if you understand how things work as far as weapon systems are concerned, then religion goes out of weapon systems. Like you understand what a weapon system is really worth, technologically, what it is worth, what it can accomplish, and what are its weaknesses. And here I might just add that there isn't a weapon system that's useless, and there isn't a weapon system that cannot be beaten.
You too.
They all have a purpose, and that's something that we forget because different countries have different requirements, and they develop their weapon systems based on the challenges that their forces face, not on what features we can add. That's especially noticeable difference between Western and US Russian technology. But we'll dwell on that on a different occasion. Um, yes, as far as what is really a game-changing news, as according to my assessment, is the fact that Russians have been able to destroy Highmass launchers very soon after they have managed to launch rockets towards Russian forces. That's not happened, though the Russians have claimed in the past that they have destroyed HIMARS launchers, but those claims have not been substantiated and they haven't had the impact. So, it's not easy to say you have destroyed a HIMARS launcher because you can attack it, you can see a HIMARS launcher, you can attack it. The result you never know. Um, for example, even if there's a blast very close to the HIMARS launcher, the launcher could be written off, or the launcher could, sustain very minor damage, be pulled into a workshop and repaired and on its way out. So
Got that.
for those forces who are attacking, they have no clue really. They can say, okay, we when they say that we have hit a HIMARS launcher, it is interpreted by most as implying that you have destroyed it. No, they're saying we have hit it. Hits can be of different severity. It's like you don't know what the outcome of the hit is. So coming back to what I was saying is there appears to be now evidence that Russia is able to strike HIMARS launchers in a manner that if they are not being destroyed already, they will soon start being destroyed. And the evidence is very clinching. It's a video that's been posted on the net. The video actually shows a HIMARS launcher launching rockets, and within a very short time, it is subject to counter battery fire. And you see the video shows submunitions impacting very in close proximity to the HIMARS launchers. The Russians claim that they used a word. They didn't actually say neutralized. They said we neutralized two HIMARS launchers. Now, neutralize again can mean it's like off road. That's also neutralized for the time being. If it is neutralized for 2 months, it's a legitimate term to use. It may not imply destroyed. Now, The interesting thing is, so far it was not possible. Theoretically, it was not possible to attack a HIMARS launcher within minutes of its launching its rockets. The reason is the HIMARS launcher was built from the ground up as a shoot and scoot launcher. It's optimized for firing a salvo. It's most MLRS have say 12 rockets or even more. The HIMARS has just 6 rockets. It fires at 6 rockets and gets out of there. Now, typically a HIMARS rocket follows a ballistic trajectory. So it goes up and then it comes down. On an average, I would put the flight time of a HIMARS rocket to its target. Now, the target can vary, of course. It can be as far away as 50 miles, or it can be as close as 20 miles. But let's say the average time is 3 minutes flight time for the HIMARS rocket to reach its target. Add to that the time taken by the weapon locating radar to process the profile of the rockets, compute a launch point, and it's an approximate computation. It's not an exact computation, and then calculate the coordinates and relay it to the counter battery fire MLRS that you have protecting your sector. So that the processing and relay would probably take a minute. You give another minute to the MLRS, which is going to respond with counter battery fire. It'll take a minute to align itself in the right direction, elevate itself, elevate the tubes so that they achieve the range required and the direction required, and then it'll fire its rockets. And the rocket will take 3 minutes to reach back. So we're talking about a total of 8 minutes. 3 minutes flight time from the HIMARS to the target area, 1 minute calculation time, 1 minute alignment time, and 3 minutes flight time back. That's 8 minutes. 8 minutes is more than enough for a HIMARS launcher to scoot from the launch area. So you shouldn't be finding the rockets over there. No, there's no way of hitting this rocket, and that's why they have survived. That's why the Russians haven't been able to. They have focused more on shooting down HIMARS rockets rather than destroying HIMARS launchers. But that game has changed because this video that is posted on the web shows the HIMARS launching its rockets, which means the surveillance, the camera is at a height and at a distance where it has actually recorded the event. It shows the plume of the rocket, then it shows the counter battery fire and the submunitions bursting close to where the HIMARS is. What that really means is the response hasn't been, it hasn't been triggered by the impact of the rockets in the target area. The response has been triggered by the flash of the rockets being fired from the launcher, which makes sense because you're seeing it on video. So let's say it is a Orion drone that had recorded this event. Orions are, they fly normally at about 20,000 feet. They can stay airborne for 24 hours. So this drone not only has the ability to optically, see the launch, the plume, but it has the processing power on board to compute a photograph and derive from that the coordinates of the launching
Yeah.
HIMARS and relay those coordinates immediately to the responding MLRS. So that's a technological leap that the Russians have made. They are not only able to spot it from within their borders, that means staying well out of Ukrainian AD range. They have put the processing power on board Orions to compute the coordinates and relay them immediately to the launching MLRS rockets. Effectively, what it does is it reduces the response time to 4 minutes. That's half of what it is, and that seems to have happened. Now, the most interesting part is not that the Russians have achieved this technological breakthrough. They were not able to do it earlier. They didn't have Orions. Orions it's a Malay drone that the production has really picked up now. And the Russians have done a very smart thing. Instead of making the drones, or the drone is capable of firing weapons also. So they haven't purposed the drone for firing weapons. They have purposed the drones purely for reconnaissance. And this might be the reason. So the drone is able to detect it. It's able to fly 24 hours continuously. It's got a radar also, synthetic aperture radar that can, if there is clouding, it can pick up ground targets even through clouding. But of course, this video is in clear weather. You see the Highmass optically, so it's probably not using the radar. So they didn't have the drones earlier. They have the drones now. They also have their reconnaissance aircraft Tu-214R, which has again got conformal synthetic aperture radar on its fuselage, and it has got the optoelectronics to pick up these flashes far off into deep into Ukrainian territory. So they have the ability, and finally they have a satellite constellation that is
Mhm.
designed to pick up the plumes of missiles being launched. So they have earlier, the it's called the Cupol or dome constellation. It was earlier focused totally on the US landmass. What probably has happened is they have launched more satellites. When the war started, they had, I think, 5 satellites in orbit. Now they have 6. The last one was launched in November. They probably will be launching at least one or two more in 2024. And now that constellation is also able to monitor Ukraine. So what that means is, it is no more are the Highmass going to escape from Russian retaliatory fire. They're going to get it. Now there is a question about the accuracy of the return fire, because even the best of SatNav plus INS doesn't give you accuracy of less than 10 meters CEP. So 10 meters is a little excessive to ensure a kill. So the normal
Yeah.
approach would be to use submunition. But again, it's not 100%. Submunition might burst, it might damage some part of the Highmass. Eventually, they will have the rockets with the terminal guidance. It's just a matter of time, because that's the advantage of Atam Nirbharta. They are self-sufficient. They're working on it. They will have terminal homing, and they will knock off the Highmass. So the Highmass threat is practically over, the way I see it. Sorry, that was I just carried on.
No, sir. I mean, this is a very interesting thing. Now, the Russians had a huge threat with regards to the HIMARS, and they kind of streamlined their front lines also. Uh, what that tells us is, their ISR is very, very good, extremely good, as a matter of fact. That's something that comes out of this particular thing. Now, let's transpose that to a situation where we stand, sir. Uh, One, do we have an HIMARS like threat coming to us from Pakistan? I'm not sure, but China. And what do we need to do with regards to, as a matter of fact, yesterday offline we were talking about 50 spy satellites. Probably that's going to be our next video. But
Mm.
do we have plans for creating a constellation so that we are able to also, one, identify and to counter these kind of threats?
I think so. There was a statement recently, a day or two ago, from the DRDO chief. I think he made a statement that we need to start making weapon systems that we require. We don't need. We should stop copying or sort of trying to duplicate what others are doing. Instead, we should do our own stuff, make our own assess our threats, and make weapon systems that address our threats. Now, that's what the Russians tend to do. They create weapon systems that are honed to the threat that they face. They don't make weapon systems to counter the Western weapon systems. They have never tried to make a F-22. It's not because they were not capable of making a F-22, but F-22 is basically an expeditionary weapon. It can go to the other end of the world and penetrate the most contested airspace and kick the door open by attacking the air defense systems over there, to allow the F-15s and the F-16s to morade the adversary. The Russians don't do that. They don't have those kind of ambitions to go across the globe and you know press hegemony claims. They are focused on their defense, and so they create systems like that. I think India is also now getting to that point. See, currently what we have, the Pinaka, this thing, they are nowhere. They would, like you have seen, we have seen that the weapon systems, even the artillery, even the most accurate artillery fire doesn't really it doesn't end the show. It's more accurate, so yes, it'll result in more casualties, but it will not destroy the enemy. It doesn't work like that. So you need more precision. You need out of box thinking to address the threats that you face now. Take the example of Highmass. Now Highmass is it was honed for shoot and scoot. See how they
Hmm.
reduced. They thought out of the box. They said, why have 12? Because 12, by the time you launch 12 rockets, the first rocket has already landed over there, and counter battery fire is coming towards you. So there is no question of launching 12 rockets. We will carry only six. And the most difficult part about like when you have a Pinaka like structure with 12 rockets, let's say, is that you have to manually load the rockets into the tube. And that takes a very long time. So to recharge the MLRS takes a long time. They containerized it. So in the Highmass, you have a container, it fires the pod, it
You remove that
removes,
and you.
and it fixes a new pod, and you're good to go. So those kind of things they have thought out of the box. Highmass can be carried by aircraft. In fact, it can be queued while it is being transported in a C-130. So you can actually program the HIMARS to hit its target before the C-130 lands. As soon as the C-130 lands in an unprepared field, it'll just emerge and it'll launch. And it'll go back and be carried away by the C-130. Those kind of capabilities it has. They are enormous capabilities, and this is what India needs to think. And we it's not that the DRDO is not doing its job. It has to be one step at a time. The good part is that we are reaching those. We have taken those steps, enough steps for the DRDO chief to say that look, we need to start making our own weapons depending on our threat, thinking out of the box. So that's a very positive development. Yes, we don't have systems that are comparable either to the Russian MLRS systems. I can go into specifics. They are facing a threat. For example, one of the we talked about the accuracy of the return fire, right? So the Russians have what they call the Tornado S MLRS. It's a 300 millimeter rocket with a range of up to 100 kilometers plus. It's that the actual range is classified, but it's more than the HIMARS. And since over a year now, they have been developing a shell that instead of explosives or cluster munition will carry a UAV. So what the Russians plan to do is they will fire a shell with a UAV. The UAV will deploy on the target area. It will mark its target, and the rest of the shells will
Oh, follow the guiding. Oh man.
home onto the laser. So that's the kind of thinking you need to have, and the fleet-footedness. You need the technologists, the scientists to be backing you up with that kind of dynamism. It's not. I'm sure they're not sending proposals to and fro from Ministry of Defense and all. These things are happening on the fly based on what is happening in the front.
Battlefield.
Yeah.
Interesting. This is quite a mind-boggling sort of a this thing. So, last question to ask is with regards to a counter battery sort of a this thing. Would the HIMARS be able to actually find a way to protect itself in this sort of an affair, or is this going to be a pretty much a game changer with regards to the usage of HIMARS itself?
See, it. These are all like in any weapon system. You lose advantage. You never become useless. No weapon system ever becomes useless. It loses its advantage. So,
Hmm.
but it retains a lot of its positive features. So I don't think HIMARS that's the end of HIMARS. It's like you have Highmass, and the US is still using the other weapon systems, other MLRS with
Dud
12
rockets.
so their usefulness doesn't disappear all of a sudden. It reduces. I think Highmass usefulness is going to reduce, but it has the attackams, and that gives it a great advantage if they keep. What happens is they may not be permitted to attack Russian mainland, but that allows them to go further into Ukrainian territory, and then target one or two HIMARS rockets with attackams can cover the entire front. So they don't have to, they can take care of the entire front in a defensive way. If there is a threat developing on, say, the north part of the front, HIMARS which are located in the south can use attackams to attack and defend,
Ji.
or attack logistic lines in the north. So you repurpose the weapon system. Now, in this particular case, you would be repurposing the weapon system for defensive purposes more than for offensive purposes.
Actually, I'm going to squeeze in one more, sir. Uh,
Okay.
the factor that we fight in the mountains, uh, and this is plain, rather plain. Ukraine is the steppes, which has rather plain
Yes.
terrain. Uh, uh, what advantages or disadvantages would a similar system have in the mountains, sir?
I think
On both sides.
the game is very different. In the mountains, the game is going to be different, but it's disadvantage India. Because once the Indian forces, for India to really feel secure, it must have the ability to mount offensive action on the Tibetan plateau. I'm talking about the threat from China, and that's where the terrain is the same as Ukraine. In fact, it may be as favorable as it is Ukraine to China. If we are on the defensive, if we are in the mountains, then our weapon systems are restricted. So we can't really go on the offensive in Tibet. One of our, uh, like the most powerful tactics that we would have in fighting China would be to go on offensive action, because the local population is unlikely to be hostile to Indian forces. So Indians going into deep column thrust, or what they call maneuver warfare. Now, maneuver warfare is not working. It's not worked in Ukraine, and that's again a big topic of discussion as to why maneuver warfare is just not working. It's like the Russian forces, they tried maneuver warfare, then they locked themselves down to a static front. And even on a static front, it is proving very difficult because of the advent of FPVs. Now, when it comes to that kind of battle, we don't have, we're not going to do very well against China, because they have the electronics, they have the FPVs, and they have the technological, manufacturing capability and manpower to quickly innovate on the field. Just my thought.
It has to
But
be
within the mountains, sorry.
probably our game needs to be a little more different than what.
Yes, yes. So, like in the past, I know we have banked on maneuver warfare, we have banked on armor. They're not going to work now. Uh, so, in some, I'm sure people, folks are watching and recalibrating
Absolutely.
their responses.
Absolutely. Sir, thanks so much, because this has been a really enlightening sort of an episode where we've learned, and to all the audience, we're going to keep them short and crisp. I would request you guys to put in your comments, because this is a new venture that we are starting in, so that we learn about military technology and the new innovations. By the way, let me just put out the idea very clearly. The reason we are doing this, and my personal reason, is so that people who listen to the channel, somebody somewhere sitting in some workshop will say, hey, listen, I can do this, and he comes up with a system. Because India today, we are looking at more and more people, startups, to talk about defense, and that is what the government policy is all about. So if more people can get interested in this game, more people learn about this game, and I'm sure more innovation will happen. The same way that we are doing it in drones, it has to happen in multiple other systems. So let me just put out my agenda right there. It's nothing hidden, nothing anything else. It's plain and simple, wide in the open, factual, as Dev Talks is always. Thank you, sir, for this wonderful
Thank you,
opportunity to
Adi.
talk
It
to
was
you.
a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.